You're listening to the Armchair GM Sports Network.
Time to sharpen those swords. You're listening to Sabres Semantics, a hard-hitting interview and discussion show featuring players, alumni, media, and all others who have or still cover the NHL's Buffalo Sabres. With interesting stories from the past and current objective analysis, this show is sure to provide an entertaining and unique perspective for both Sabres and hockey fans alike.
Oh, brother, we are not worthy!
Exclusively on the Armchair GM Sports Network. Now, here's your host of Sabres Semantics, Brandon Caputo.
Welcome into the season premiere episode of Sabres Semantics right here on the Armchair GM Sports Network, proudly brought to you by the Niagara Employment Help Centre, helping people find work in Niagara since 1983. Brandon Caputo and Austin Broad are with you to break down the Sabres Prospect Challenge that just happened this past weekend. As well, we'll talk about the training camp rosters that were just released yesterday, as training camp is going to be starting today by the time this episode does release. And we'll also look ahead to their upcoming preseason, and they're going to be going overseas as well for the start of the regular season. But guys, make sure to give us a follow at Sabres Semantics on Twitter or X, and as well on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, all that good stuff by searching Armchair GM Sports Network. And thank you to those today watching us on the video version on YouTube. Make sure to hit like, hit subscribe, and smash that bell if you want to see more Sabres content like this all throughout the hockey season. And thank you to those today tuning in on your favorite on-demand audio platform. Austin, before we get going with the stuff that matters here, I guess, to the people listening and watching, how was your summer? And to come back, talk about Sabres hockey once again this season.
Yeah, summer was good. Didn't seem nearly as long, like the off season. I don't know, considering the Sabres were busy, I guess. So maybe that helped. Obviously, they didn't make any huge, ginormous splashes, but they made some moves there. Prospects Challenge continued to grow. What was it, like 6 teams this year? I think I remember the first time that they did this, it was literally just Buffalo, Boston, Pittsburgh. So, I mean, a lot of content in the offseason, but definitely glad training camp's here. Definitely glad we're back in the swing of things. Glad it falls here. NFL started already. Baseball playoffs are coming up. NHL hockey starting to gear up. It feels like the best time of year, I guess. We'll see. We'll see what happens when the season actually gets underway, though.
Yeah, your Bills are 2-0. My Falcons are 1-1. So we'll see how the NFL season rolls around, and if we have gray hair by the time we get to January with the NFL and hockey season. But I mean, thank you to everybody that has been patient with us. We had that off-season episode for you guys, and I tried to clip as much of it and post it on YouTube as possible. We talked about a lot of the trades and a lot of the things that we thought the Sabres might do. They didn't do some things. They did do a couple other things. And we'll get into all of the roster and everything like that on our season kind of preview show, which is going to be in 2 weeks from now, right before the start of the regular season. We'll get into all the line combinations. We'll get into the schedule and everything like that, and we'll get into our regularly scheduled segments that we'll be bringing you throughout the season. But as far as this season premiere episode, it's going to be a little bit more off the cuff. We're going to talk about the Prospect Challenge and the training camp rosters that were released, at the time of recording this night. But Austin, let's talk about the Prospect Challenge. Obviously, as you said, it's been a growing event here in downtown Buffalo at the Harbor Center. Now 6 teams. Montreal was the only team not to return this year. They went and did their own thing with Toronto at the Bell Center, and I'm sure they did great with that. But they were replaced with the Columbus Blue Jackets, and we saw 3 days worth of games, 3 games on each day. You didn't get to play every team, but the Sabres did get to play against 3 of the teams, and they went 1-2 on the Prospect Challenge tournament as a whole. Before we get into the player part of it, what were your initial reactions of the whole tournament itself and Buffalo's overall results there?
Yeah, so like normally I don't buy too much into the results of these things. I think I'm not going to say I was a little bit surprised at who the Sabres brought, but there were a few names on there that I was like, oh, it's interesting that they're on the Prospects Challenge roster. Like Ryan Johnson, kind of figured maybe he wouldn't be on that roster considering, Kulich and Rosen a little bit, not so much as surprised, but again, experienced guys who have played, multiple seasons in North America. But I get why they did it. It's a nice little ramp up for their training camp. A lot of goals scored. I think what was the last game, Pittsburgh 8-5.
Yes.
Yeah, right. So a lot of goals. It's good to see though, right? It's a nice little primer for training camp because unlike like the NFL, NHL training camps like 2 days. It starts today on Wednesday, and preseason starts their first game Saturday. So it's like training camp's not really a thing. It's more or less just all preseason. So it's a nice little primer for these guys. We'll see how much opportunity guys like Kulich and Rosen actually have to earn a spot on the roster's camp, their main roster this year. We'll see if that's even possible. Again, like you said, we'll talk more about that later on. But as for the Prospects Challenge itself, it's good for fans to see the names that they've known, right? Like Kulich, Rosen played good. Wahlberg was really good. You got to see Hellenius' first like real game action against other teams. So like I said, results don't really matter, but it's always cool to see some of those guys put on the Sabres jersey and play an actual game action before the preseason ramps up.
Yeah, and we got to see some highly touted prospects from a couple of the other teams. A lot, you always see the camp invites, and not the teams. Some of the teams might not have the strongest prospect pools compared to others, but when you look at it, you saw guys like Rucker McGroarty were there for the Pittsburgh Penguins, so that was a big name that a lot of the media were looking to talk to. And then just the general people that were there. You don't usually get to walk around and mingle with a bunch of people within the NHL organization. So you saw people like Jason Spezza walking around, Rick Nash, Marty Brodeur, Brian Burke was there for even a day, and some of these general managers from the other teams. It's just kind of interesting to see those guys just walking around and watching these prospects. And if you're one of those prospects and you see those general managers and guys within the organizations, this is a real good job interview for you to maybe crack the training camp rosters when they do come out for these teams. So I think it's an important thing. Obviously, it's not going to be you can't really take too much into the scores and everything like that, as you mentioned, because half these teams are camp invite guys and guys that aren't probably ever going to be wearing the real Sabres jersey. But it's a good gauge where you are amongst your peers, I guess. And with Montreal not there having one of the best prospect pools, it was pretty competitive throughout. Obviously, the Sabres only won one of the games, but anytime that Buffalo played, it was really good crowds. It was sold out on the Saturday for the Fan Fest, so that obviously played into it as well, being able to have all those extra fans there. So you get to play in front of a real crowd. They have the real goal horn. They have everything that you would see just down the street there at the Key Bank Center. So it was interesting to see, and I just like the whole structure of the tournament. I like how they do it. It was a long 3 days to cover the thing, so I'm still recovering from it as we speak. I was there all 3 days. It was definitely a really cool event. But as we kind of look into the players themselves a bit here, Austin, who were some of the players that kind of stood out to you? And I'm going to put up the final lineup from the Sabres' last game there against the Penguins, who went 3-0 on the tournament and had the best record of any of the teams there. Thoughts on the lineup and any players that you wanted to kind of talk about here?
Yeah, so as I said off the top, I don't buy too much into the results, but at the same time, when you look at the roster that the Sabres put out, there are certain guys where if they didn't perform, you'd be like, huh, that's a little interesting. So it was obviously really good to see, like Kulich, Rosen go out there and just, dominate. That's what those guys should do at this. They've been doing this for a while. They're some of the Sabres' best prospects. Some other guys besides those two, obviously. Hellenius, I thought, flashed at times. You could see why the Sabres picked him when they did. He's a very, very talented two-way player. Maybe didn't have the production that those other guys had, but I thought he put on some really good showings there. And another guy that I really liked, especially on the forward side, is Anton Wahlberg. I think he is a workhorse of a prospect that's going to fit in really well with what Kevin Adams and Lindy Ruff want to do. And I think he's going to really, really have a nice year in Rochester. We kind of saw that at the end of the year. He flashed. He had some production there. But I think he's a player that's really going to endear himself to Sabres fans. Defensively, I was expecting maybe a little bit more from guys like Komarov and maybe Novikov, who they flashed at times, but I think maybe it's just a guy like Komarov, maybe the production in the Quebec League and the fact that he's been a winner at that so many times. It's really hard to kind of flash in a little 3-game prospect thing, but I think I would have liked to see a little bit more from him. But that being said, I thought it was a really good showing from everybody. Leanders, I thought, struggled at times, but so did Ratzlaff. They both had ups and downs. I think that's just, again, when you're playing in a highly touted prospect exhibition tournament like this, you're going to see high-end scoring. That's just what these kind of events are. It's basically not a glorified junior game, but as someone who covers and watches a lot of junior hockey, we know in junior hockey there's tons of goals, and this is kind of an extension of that. So the high goal totals really aren't that shocking, but I thought you saw some bright spots from Leanders and Ratzlaff as well, but also probably some areas where you thought those guys could have played a little bit better.
And to note, they did lose 2 defensemen during the tournament as well, so
yeah,
they were undermanned in that sense.
Yeah, was it? I don't know. I'm not going to call it like a cheap shot, but that Devils guy kind of took out both of them.
Yeah, so they were down 2 defensemen in that sense, so they dressed an extra forward. They only had 5D for that final game against Pittsburgh, so they were limping to the finish line in that sense because they didn't really bring any extra defensemen. And
no, I think they brought up someone from Jacksonville to, like, as a camp invite for that last game. I don't even
right.
Like, he's obviously not like you said, he's not a Sabres prospect. So you said it's a lot of camp invites. So that's kind of what happens here. You don't really want to see any injuries and things like that. So that's why I said it's a good primer. It's tough to evaluate the nitty gritties, but if guys like Kulich and Rosen had really bad showings, that would be something noteworthy. So noteworthy that they performed well and dominated the way that they should.
Yeah, Kulich had 5 goals in the 3 games. Couple of 2-goal nights in the opening game, and then in the final game, you can see him and Roseanne, the chemistry that they've built down there in Rochester. Roseanne more of the setup guy, and Kulich more of the finisher on the power play. Those guys really like to set up that one cross ice pass to Kulich on the right faceoff dot, and he scored on that a few times. It just seems like their chemistry has blossomed over the last little while, and if they get broken up for Kulich coming up to the NHL, see how long it would take Roseanne in that sense. But we'll get into the roster and everything in the next episode. But if Kulich does go back down to Rochester this year, I expect him and Roseanne to really, really dominate on that top line this year. And then, whatever happens the year following. But they're going to have good opportunities to really make the club going into the future. But if this was a preview of what to expect from those two in Rochester this year, I think Amerks fans should be really excited about what's to come down there with Mike Leone at the helm.
Yeah, I'll go even one further. That last game, Nuchev was also on their wing, was he not? I think that has a legitimate shot to be maybe not the top line, but at least the second line in Rochester. Like, I think those three had a lot of chemistry. Nuchev is a guy that he's very raw, but he's very skilled. Kisakov is also another. Like, Rochester's going to have a lot of talent. I'm interested to see how Leone handles the roles and the usages down there, because this Rochester team now with Hellenius also being over here in North America now has a lot of high-end Buffalo prospects to kind of tinker with, and I'm very interested to see how he, builds that lineup, because it's really going to be intriguing, and they should be a ton of fun.
Yeah, Neuchev scored 2 goals in the final game as well. That should be noted there with Kulich. But as far as the defensive side, I was surprised that Ryan Johnson was there. This is a guy that's played in the NHL. He's played a handful of games there, played a full season or 2 in Rochester, so it was kind of weird to see him on the roster, but I guess they just thought they would have a veteran guy back there for what was a pretty young decor in that sense, with a lot of those new guys that you mentioned, Komarov and Novikov, and then obviously having the 2 defensemen get hurt, so they obviously needed him back there, but who else maybe throughout the lineup? I know Ty Tullio got on the board in the second game, so that was nice to see him, the former Oshawa Generals captain who we used to cover in the OHL, coming over as that extra piece in the Matt Savoy for Ryan McLeod swap. And Buffalo said they wanted him in the trade, so they obviously must have some sort of role for him in Rochester. He spoke to the media after the second game and says he's ready to kind of get his career reset here, and he thinks that this is really the opportunity to get his career back on track in the way that he wants to go about things. So he just wants to be a solid piece there in Rochester for the team. So any other kind of depth guys that maybe had a flash or two throughout the weekend?
Yeah, I don't know if I would necessarily call him a depth piece, but you kind of mentioned Nuichev there. I thought he flashed a lot really well. to touch on the Ryan Johnson thing, I was also a little bit shocked. But now that I think about it, it's Leon's a brand new coach in Rochester. Probably wanted to get as much time together with some of those guys he's going to have down there. So I guess it kind of makes sense. But I was also a little bit shocked that he was there as well. But Tullio, I'm interested to see again what his role is, because again, when you look at the high end prospects that Buffalo has mixed with some of the AHL veterans that they have down there, is Tullio going to be just the AHL guy, or does Buffalo really see him as a potential, bottom six depth piece going forward? So he's got a chance, like you said, to reset his career. We know he's got the skill. We know he can play. He scored a ton in the OHL. So good opportunity for him here. Good start to there. And I think, the Buffalo News, Lance Zowski did a nice little piece on him there as well. So good little start here. Like you said, we'll see what happens. Now these guys, was there anyone on the prospects camp of note that didn't get invited to training camp as well? I don't think so, right?
Not that I've kind of looked at through the initial roster coming out, but I mean, pretty much everybody that was a draft pick or was signed was pretty much there. Like, both goalies are going to be there, Ratzlaff and Leenders. Yep. So, I mean, those are two young goalies.
Or the big camp starts today, so it's going to be really interesting. I'm interested to see what Nadeau is going to do as well, because I think Olivier Nadeau is not the greatest skater, but he's really good hands, really good ability to score, really good nose for the net. Again, you can see it's guys like that I think will have a better shot at maybe, again, not becoming something in Buffalo, because they have a lot of high-end talent, but it's those guys that work hard, get to those dirty areas. This is everything that Adams and Ruff have said that they wanted. So a guy like Olivier Nadeau is also a guy that I'm kind of interested to see what his progress is in Rochester this year, because really liked him as a late round pick. He scores a lot, really good skill. Maybe now with the new identity that Buffalo is forming, maybe he's a guy that maybe gets a role.
Yeah, and he was a guy that we spoke to in the media, I believe, after the first game, and that was a guy that he's had a good story. He went down to Jacksonville last year, had to kind of reset things, got back up and earned an opportunity. So a former guy from the QMJHL, and as you mentioned, maybe he's turning some heads there, and maybe he can earn himself a spot on Rochester, because he's obviously had to grind and fight his way back up through the organization after, pretty much going as low as you can. So it would be a nice feel-good story for Olivier Nadeau to be able to kind of crack that Rochester lineup and have a solid kind of run with them as a depth piece. But we'll go to a quick post-game with Jiri Kulich following the Sabres Prospect Challenge, following his five goals in 3 games. We had a chance to catch up with him following the tournament, and that post-game is going to be brought to you by Wild Bill's Auto Repair, helping customers stay safe and confident on the road in Niagara since 2012 in honor of the late William Robert Hunter. Here is Jiri Kulich following his Prospect Challenge tournament.
Tournament will help you now as you get ready for training camp on Wednesday.
I felt more confident than years before, so I'm going to the camp to be still confident, work hard, and just enjoy the hockey.
Offensively, what may help you in this tournament offensively to pretty much dominate like you did?
I think because I'm now stronger and confident as well. I'm not scared to go in battles, and I feel more stronger.
Like Dennis did, Mike was just talking about, he was impressed with just the play away from the puck and your determination. You feel more confident in those areas too.
Oh yeah.
I guess, why? Is it just your strength, your experience, both?
I think every rookie tournament is a great experience for us, and that's my 3rd one. So now I think what I have to improve for a couple of days, for next couple of days. So
For the last year, you've played mostly center, but you've played wing before. If the Sabres want you to move over to the wing in camp, are you ready for that? Can you do that?
Oh yeah. To be honest, I don't really care if I play center or wing. So yeah.
What is the challenge with wing in terms of just wall play? How do you feel about your play along the wall and how you've progressed, winning those battles and obviously making plays.
Yeah, that was the thing I was working this summer too. Be good on the wall, win the puck battles, and yeah, just be smart in the D zone. Nothing like not doing some skills or something. Just be smart.
You knew a lot of these guys from previous years. What was it like playing with Hellenius, a brand new guy, a first-round pick? What did you think of him out there?
Yeah, I mean, Helly doesn't look like 18 years old, but yeah, he's a great guy, great kid, and what he does on the ice is it's amazing. Yeah, so.
Can you tell he's played in the men's league? You know, in Sweden or in Finland, he played in the men's league there. Can you tell just the way he plays that he's played against men?
Oh yeah, like yeah. I mean, I said he's not looking like 18 years old on the ice. So especially I think Finland league is pretty tough too, and yeah, when you play as a 17 years old with the men, it helps you so much on this tournament and especially to your career. So
there were the post-game thoughts from Jiri Kulich. Austin, he's a guy that he's still kind of learning English, and he's not the most comfortable doing media, but he did a good job, and he even asked for reaffirmation of some of the questions when he was asked by certain members of the media, you know, can you repeat it, or I didn't understand what you were saying. But the stuff that he did say, talked about being more confident coming in to this year than he did the year prior. He just feels like he really improved on his, you know, touch around the net, his competitiveness, every aspect of his game. He feels like he's more confident in now. You can see the way that he shoots the puck. He's more confident, and he just basically said that, you know, they want us to play like the Sabres want us to play, and he's got high hopes of going to training camp and making the Sabres roster. You want him to have that mentality. If he didn't, then you would kind of question, why is he here? So for the fact that he has that mentality, that he wants to crack that Sabres lineup, and if he does go back down to Rochester, I think he's going to take it in stride, but he's got a lot to build off of here from this prospect challenge going into today's training camp, and I just like his mentality. I like the way that he wants to play this year and what they're expecting of him. Now Seth Appert is an assistant coach under Lindy Ruff, who was with him all year last year in Rochester. So I think Seth Appert's going to be kind of an advocate for Jiri Kulich in that sense, and all those other guys coming up from Rochester, because he has such a, you know, unique relationship with those guys that Lindy Ruff just doesn't have. So I think he'll be in his ear about which guys, you know, he thinks that are ready and maybe could use another year and some seasoning down there in Rochester. But, you know, Jiri Kulich, obviously a guy that a lot of people around the hockey world have high hopes for.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really hard because, like you said, he says all the right things. He plays the game the right way. He even said he wants to get better at his two-way plays, defense, things like that, which, you know, Vinny Prospal also kind of agrees with. But at the same time, it's like, what a way to set the tone for your training camp. I think it's going to be really hard for him to make the team out of camp. Mm-hmm. Like, it's going to take a Zach Benson. Like there is no chance that we can send this guy down, because unfortunately for Kulich, they can just send him to the AHL and use him as their first call up. Like, they have some flexibility with him and, you know, other guys like Rosane and things like that. So I'm really excited to see how he handles himself in this preseason. He's got all the talent in the world. He's a great shooter. He's got the right mentality, like you said. And worst case scenario, if he doesn't make Buffalo right away, I don't think there's, you know, a lot of doubt from anybody out there that covers this team that he's the first call up, because he's that talented. I think it's time for him to make the jump to the NHL, but I also am acknowledging that, you know, if he's not on that second line scoring role, there's really not a spot for him. So unless he forces their hand, he's probably not going to make the team. But that is not an indictment on him at all. He's going to go down to Rochester. He's going to work on some things. He's going to light up the score sheet like he always does down there. And this year, I hope, is the year that he gets an extended look, because we all talk about how great these prospects are. Eventually, you need to see him in the NHL. Otherwise, what are we doing here? So I'm really excited to see what he does this year. I really hope he forces their hand and makes this team, but I also am not 100% confident, because I just think, like, with the mix of they need to win now, the team has kind of, they said they're in win now mode. All their moves don't necessarily reflect that, but if you're in win now mode, you have to make those tough decisions. But I mean, what a story it would be if he forces their hand and has just an unreal preseason and becomes a full-time Sabre from day one this year.
So before we hit the break, if you're Kulich and like your mindset, they kind of cleared the path for you to have a shot. Like they move out Skinner, they buy him out. They moved Matt Savoy in the offseason, so that was another guy, another top prospect that you were kind of battling with for an NHL spot. Again, Zach Benson kind of passed all of them last year, which nobody really expected that quick. But when you look at it, if you're Jiri Kulich and you see, they didn't go out and get that top six forward that we were kind of clamoring for the whole offseason. You move out Skinner, you move out Savoy. You must think you have a real shot to make this team, even if he doesn't end up getting it in the end. The path is there for him to see that he could be a Sabre in the near future.
Oh, for sure the path is there. Like you just said, they didn't really replace that. The closest thing to a top six guy that they went out and got was Jason Zucker, which, no disrespect, if he is your stopgap top six for the first little while one of these guys finally comes up, I'm fine with that. But in a perfect world, Zucker would be on that third line as a scoring winger. That kind of leaves, the potential of, let's say, Kulich, a Benson, and a Zucker fighting for that second line scoring spot.
Yeah.
I mean, nothing against Zucker. He's older in this league, probably better suited for a third line winger. Benson was really good last year. He made the team out of camp. He had some ups and downs, but he showed that he's a really good NHL player. Again, don't want to just hand him the top six spot, but I like his style of play. I wouldn't be mad at all if he was slotted in on that top six line to start the season to see how it goes. But like you said, it's not like those are unbeatable barriers. Kulich could very well beat out both of them and earn that top six scoring spot, and then they can both be on the third line. So the path is there. I just wonder, like, we see the path, other people see that same path, but I just wonder internally for the Sabres, how realistic is that path? That's my only concern here. I'm not saying they've already made up their mind, but it feels like they've kind of already made up their mind based off the fact that Greenway's still here, Krebs is still here, they have Aubé-Kubel. They have a lot of extra forwards already, so I'm worried that internally their mind's already made up, where it's, like I said, he's literally going to have a Zach Benson-esque preseason and force their hand, which is not out of the question at all, by the way. Jiri Kulich is extremely talented and can very well do that. We could be sitting here 2 weeks from now and he could be that second line winger.
Yeah, he possibly could, but we'll see what Lindy Ruff kind of has in store there. But like I said, hopefully Seth Appert will be an advocate for him there as a guy that was his head coach in Rochester. But as you mentioned, internally, maybe they have other plans and other ways that they want to kind of go about the call-ups this year. So we'll kind of see how that develops as the season goes on. And yeah, like you said, maybe we'll come back in 2 weeks and we've been told that he's cracked the roster. But with that said, we're going to take a quick commercial break. We're going to come back and we're going to react to the training camp rosters for the start of the Sabres training camp later today, and as well the Peyton Krebs signing that just happened the other day. So stay right here. Be right back on Sabres Semantics right here in the Armchair GM Sports Network. Proudly brought to you by the Niagara Employment Help Centre, helping people find work in Niagara since 1983.
Are you currently looking for work in the Niagara region? If so, you owe it to yourself to check out the services provided by the Niagara Employment Help Centre, located at 6100 Thorold Stone Road in Niagara Falls. Their many free services include a fully staffed resource area open to the public, resume and cover letter writing, local labor market information, job search strategies, assistance with clarifying employment, training and career goals, employment counseling and job search support, and Better Jobs Ontario information and registration assistance. Check out their website at ehc.on.ca or call 905-358-0021 for more information. The Niagara Employment Help Centre, helping people find work since 1983.
This Employment Ontario program is funded by the Government of Ontario. Wild Bill's Auto Repair is your local center for auto maintenance and repair in the Niagara region. Since 2012, Wild Bill's Auto Repair and Body Shop has been helping customers stay safe and confident on the road, knowing their vehicles in top running condition through their services. Located at 7868 Oakwood Drive in Niagara Falls, the garage started as a tribute to the owner's father, William Robert Hunter, who passed away, continuing the same community spirit and high level of service which customers came to expect from him back at Hunter's Auto Repair. Their multi-award-winning auto shop has earned the trust of the Niagara community with its fair treatment of all customers, who can feel confident they'll get the trustworthy advice and repairs during their visit. Their experienced crew loves meeting new people and looks forward to forming a lasting partnership for the care of your cars. To find out more or to book a service, contact them today. 905-358-7868 or wildbillsauto.ca. Wild Bill's Auto Repair, helping customers stay safe and confident on the road since 2012.
Fuel up your day with Gale's Gas Bars. They're your go-to gas stations in the Niagara region. Remember, at Gale's, they're not just a gas station. They're a local tradition. Whether you're hitting the road or staying cozy at home, choose Gale's. Gale's Gas Bars provide reliable fuel that keeps you moving. Stop in for quality you can trust and service with a smile. Don't settle for less. Head to Gale's Gas Bars today, because when it comes to fuel, you're going to Gale's! Learn more at gales.ca.
Pets bring immense joy to our homes, becoming an integral part of our families. But this living, loving experience often requires a little extra care and attention. That's where Global Pet Foods comes in, with owners and staff ready to support you every step of the way. Check out one of their locations today: 3643 Portage Road in Niagara Falls, 160 Highway 20 in Font Hill, or 400 Scott Street and 344 Glendale Avenue in St. Catharines. Global Pet Foods, where pets are undeniably part of the family. Proud show sponsor of the Dog Pound Podcast, the official podcast of the Niagara Ice Dogs.
The great guys over at Hockey Stick Man are sponsoring this video. If you play hockey but are sick of paying upwards of $400 for top-end sticks, check these guys out. There's seriously no better place to shop. The guys are fun, easy, and offer a stress-free experience from start to finish. They get pro stock sticks from major junior teams right up to the NHL teams and sell them for half the price that the same stick would sell for at a retail store. To further support their mission of saving hockey families money, they offer closeout options, which entail taking last year's retail models and blowing them out for less than wholesale prices. It's literally the best prices on the internet for their sticks. And the best sticks of all may be their Pro Blackout series, which provide a top-end stick with no graphics and literally less than half the price of a branded top-end retail model. It's always been their best-selling stick despite super cool pro stock options. It's a no-brainer to shop with these guys, and trust me, they are beauties. Head over to hockeystickman.ca/thearmchairgm and get $15 off your first order. That's hockeystickman.ca/thearmchairgm to get an additional $15 off your first order when you sign up on their website. Check out our friends at Hockey Stick Man.
You're listening to the Armchair GM Sports Network, the Niagara region's best local source for North American sports podcasting coverage. By sports fans, for sports fans.
Hey, hey, here we go, it's hockey night in Buffalo. Hey, hey, here we go, the boys in blue, white, and gold.
Welcome back to part 2 of today's Sabres Semantics season premiere episode. Brandon Caputo and Austin Broad are back with you. Thank you to those today watching us on the video version on YouTube. Make sure to hit like, hit subscribe, and smash that bell for all updates on video versions of our podcast and clips from our episodes that do get released here on the YouTube channel. And thank you to those today listening to us on your favorite on-demand audio platform. Give us some love on whatever one you chose to listen to us today. Make sure to give us a follow at Sabres Semantics. We'll be posting our fan polls throughout the season for all of our shows, giving you guys a chance to get in on the conversation for our shows. And make sure to give us a follow at Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, all that good stuff for you guys by searching the Armchair GM Sports Network. Austin, let's talk about the training camp rosters. We talked about the Prospect Challenge in segment 1. And the camp rosters, training camp starting today, at the time of this episode coming out. So let's take a look at the forwards here. And I've got it up on the video version of the podcast for you guys. And if you're following along on audio, just go look it up on the Sabres Twitter. Anything that sticks out to you there about the guys that were invited to this camp, maybe that had a good showing at the Prospect Challenge that you're looking forward to seeing how they kind of build on things. The guys not named Isak Roseanne and Jiri Kulich, Ryan Johnson, and kind of what are you just expecting from Lindy Ruff's first training camp back as the Buffalo Sabres head coach?
I think it was it Kulich who had the quote earlier saying training camp's going to be a war? Because I think that's the mentality that Lindy Ruff is going to try and instill right away. If there's one thing we know about Lindy Ruff and everything that Kevin Adams has said this summer, it's accountability, accountability, accountability. Well, I got to imagine the practices are going to have a lot of intensity. Like, they're going to be fast-paced. They're going to be battling. And there's going to be a lot of yelling and screaming, which is probably what Sabres fans want. So I'm very, very excited to see just the pace of the practices, the things that they're practicing. Again, how much are we going to get to see in the preseason in terms of their systems? I'm not really sure, but I'm interested to see how Seth Appert handles this power play. I'm interested to see what lineups Lindy Ruff and them want to, like, what they want to deploy. Because I think in everyone's mind, everyone kind of has their own idea of what they're expecting the Sabres, 12 forwards and 6 defense to look like. But I also wouldn't be surprised if Lindy Ruff kind of just throws a couple curveballs out there too. So I'm just, there's a lot to see. It's not like last year where there were some obvious, like, training camp battles. When you look at guys like, Greenway and Krebs, I think those maybe less now. Peyton Krebs, now that he's got a 2-year, $1.45 million deal. But those are two guys that I were kind of expecting to have to battle for their spot. I still think that there's a really good chance that they do have to battle for their position. Like, I wouldn't be surprised at all if come opening day, Greenway or Krebs, or even both, are the extra forwards. So if that's the case, who's going to beat them out? I don't really know. So it's things like that I'm really interested to see. And I'm interested to see which one of these young guys kind of endears themselves to Lindy Ruff, because guys like Hellenius, he's not going to make the team, but he's going to play. I think he's going to play the way that Lindy Ruff wants people to play. A guy like Anton Wahlberg, same thing. He's going to play the way that Lindy Ruff wants this team to play. So which one of these young guys is going to be the Zach Benson of this year, but obviously probably just won't make the team. But there's always one prospect that has a great preseason that Sabres fans really love. And if I had to bet, I'm gonna put my money on Wahlberg or Hellenius, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's somebody else like that we haven't talked about yet.
And Hellenius, when Leon was asked about him actually, I think it was Jiri Kulich that was asked about him in the Prospect Challenge presser there. When he asked, can you tell that he's played a year of pro hockey, Kulich says, he comes in not looking like a rookie. He knows, he's responsible 200 foot. You can see that he's an offensively gifted player, but they put him out there on a two-man disadvantage as the centerman. So you can tell that he's kind of played in that pro style of system already. So he might have, the not as hard of a transition as some of those newer guys would coming into their first training camp as first round picks that we've seen in the past. So I think Hellenius is a guy that, some people have said that he has a chance to crack the lineup right away. And again, he would have to have an unbelievable training camp to be able to beat out guys like Roseanne and Kulich for that spot. But I mean, to already think that he has a shot as a first year player, to me, that's already a plus. But I think the ultimate plan is for him to start his first year in North America in Rochester, get some seasoning down there, learn how to play the North American pro style for a year. And I think that we'll see him on the Sabres sooner rather than later, but I just don't know if this is the year for him, and kind of give him some time down there in Rochester first.
Oh yeah, I like I said, I think, again, it's easy to say it's Kulich and Roseanne, but I keep going back to those two because they've been in the system the longest. They have that pedigree. But it's going to be, a Kulich or a Roseanne that have like the most realistic shot at unseating somebody and earning a spot. A guy like Konsta Hellenius, I know his coach, Ole Jokinen, very good hockey guy, by the way. If he gives you an endorsement, whether he's, hyping up his guys or not, if he gives you an endorsement, that's something you're going to want to listen to. Wouldn't be surprised if Hellenius has a really strong preseason, a really strong camp, and there's some hype around it. But I just don't know. Like you said, get him acclimated. Let him. He'll be a Sabre sooner rather than later. He's extremely talented. It's just, it feels like for the first last year too, I guess. But for the first time, it's like, I don't care about the prospect storylines in training camp. I need to see who this NHL roster is, which players are playing good, because it's time to put on your big boy, your hard hat and your lunch pail, because that's what everyone talks about in Buffalo. Put on your hard hat and your lunch pail and get to work, because this team has to make the playoffs this year. So I'm hoping that it literally is the best 12 forwards and 60 make the roster. But at the same time, I don't know. Do you realistically see a chance where a guy like Jordan Greenway gets beaten out by a prospect? It should, like I said, it should happen if those guys clearly outperform him. Maybe I'm still just a little traumatized by the Don Granato being so loyal to his guys type of deal, but I would be not stunned, but I would be very pleasantly surprised if one of the big prospects actually starts the season as a regular for the Sabres this year.
Yeah, like I would hope that they're going to put the best 12 forwards out there to succeed. I mean, they didn't go out and get that top 6 forward, and they seem to think they have it within this organization, or they would have made that move. So either that's Kulich or somebody else stepping up into that role. You know, they must already think that it's on the roster, because I just don't see a huge trade coming in the preseason unless they're going to be, you know, dumping a guy like Greenway onto another team if Kulich or Roseanne are ready to go and kind of beat him out in that sense. But I mean, they're starting off over in Europe, so it's going to be tough. I mean, they're going to have to carry some extra bodies. I'm sure there's going to be, you know, a taxi squad that they'll be able to call up and down from in case things happen over there. But as far as training camp goes, like I don't see those guys starting the season as Buffalo Sabres, because it would, again, we've talked about it all episode, taking a Zach Benson-like performance. But if those guys have a solid performance and injuries do happen during the season, as you mentioned, who's going to be that first call-up? You'd think it's going to be Kulich, Roseanne. Hellenius maybe will get some action this year in the NHL. I would be shocked if he did, but who knows what's going to happen. But again, it's going to be different under Lindy Ruff. We'll see what kind of players he does like. We'll see what kind of players that he thinks are going to be better suited for Rochester with Leon and Vinny Prospel down there. And, you know, strategically wanting them to work on certain things that will make them more NHL ready. But we've seen Lindy Ruff, he can be tough on certain players if he doesn't like them. We saw in his first tenure with the Sabres, certain players that, you know, he didn't like throughout the lineup and you know, would hold them accountable more so than other players. We saw how, you know, horrible Timo Meier was in New Jersey under Lindy Ruff last year. So, again, we don't know. Maybe Jeff Skinner was going to be that guy, so that's why they kind of moved him out to Edmonton. But you're kind of already trying to piece together, okay, who are going to be Lindy's guys, because you already see some of these guys that were Don Granato guys, like Jordan Greenway and Peyton Krebs and those types of guys. Krebs re-signs for 2 years, which we'll talk about. So it's going to be a lot of competition in that bottom 6. That's what I'm looking at. Like, yeah, we don't know which forward gets elevated. Maybe it's Zucker as the second line left winger to start. I don't know. Maybe it's Benson, but regardless, that bottom 6 competition is going to be very, very interesting to me.
Yeah, 100%. I got one for you here. Name one forward and one defenseman in training camp that you were most interested in watching and seeing how their role for the upcoming season kind of unfolds.
Ryan Johnson. Like, for me, it's got to be Ryan Johnson, because, again, you and I said that he should have been in the NHL last year. And now they bring back guys like Bryson. We heard them that they were in the conversation for Mark Giordano for some weird reason. I really hope I really hope that was not a real thing, because why on earth would you bring in Mark Giordano when you've already got, you know, a stopgap guy on your defensive core ready to move out maybe in this season or the next offseason in Henry Jokiharju? Why you would bring in a guy like Mark Giordano, I have no idea, especially when you're trying to bring up a guy like Ryan Johnson. It just makes no sense. We don't want another Eric Johnson situation where they bring in a veteran and they just put him in the lineup because they feel like they need to, as a guy that's been in the league a long time. So I'm glad they did not go in the Mark Giordano route. And that was that's long gone. But to me, Ryan Johnson, because I want to know, is he going to be a 5-6 defenseman on this team? Is he going to be the number 1 D in Rochester? We know he's talented enough to play at this level, but is Lindy Ruff going to give him an opportunity to really showcase that he could be a quality NHL defenseman on a full-time basis?
I like that. I got 2. So for forwards, I'm going to go McLeod. I think Ryan McLeod is probably the most interesting name for a lot of Sabres fans, because not only was he part of that Savoy trade, but he is penciled in that third-line center replacing Casey Middlestat. Again, a completely different player, a speed, two-way guy that we've kind of said that they need. So I'm very interested to see the role that they envision for him. Is it, you know, third-line center at 5-on-5? Is it PK1? Is it power play 2? Very interested to see how Lindy Ruff uses him and how he fits in and who his line mates are. On defense, I'm most intrigued by Bowen Byram, right? Aside from McLeod, Eichel trade, like, ignore the Eichel trade, but aside from McLeod, probably Kevin Adams' biggest swing. Actually, I don't even think it's much of an argument. He's probably a bigger swing than, I don't know. You might look at it either way, but those are his 2 big swings, McLeod and Byram. How does Bowen Byram fit in a Lindy Ruff system? Is it going to be, you know, Byram and Dahlin? Is it going to be Power and Dahlin? Is he going to, you know, go, Darlene, Power, Byram all three on a different pair. Where does Byram fit in on the special teams? What role do they envision for Bowen Byram? Because you traded Casey Middlestat for him, envisioning him in a Don Granado system. Well, the Don Granado system's not here anymore. Now he's in a Lindy Ruff system. He's a guy who has a contract that needs to be, signed soon, as do a lot of other guys that we've mentioned so far today. So how is Lindy Ruff going to use him, and how is he going to work in Lindy Ruff's system? Because if Bowen Byram works out and improves in this Lindy Ruff system, that trade looks a lot better. So those are the two names that I'm really interested in. I know it's probably a little bit of a cop-out because those are obviously two guys that are for sure on this team no matter what, but to me, that's why they're the most intriguing. How is McLeod going to be used, and what does Bowen Byram look like? To me, those are the two biggest storylines, because if those two guys take steps forward and have really good years, those two guys could be some of the biggest keys for getting this team over the hump and potentially into the playoffs.
I like that, and my honorable mention is Comrade, because again, I expect him to be in Rochester, but I want to see how he does at this level at training camp. A guy that was a defenseman of the year in the QMJHL. Again, I fully expect him to be in Rochester this year, but I really want to see what he kind of brings, the type of dynamic he's going to bring. He's got some fellow Russian-speaking players to kind of make that transition easier for him. So I'm looking forward to seeing what he does in his first year of pros down there with Rochester. But the other one that I want to touch on here, Austin, is the goaltending, because obviously they bring in Ratzlaff and Leenders as guys that are most likely not going to make the team right away, the two youngest goaltenders that they have at this camp. You brought in James Reimer in the offseason. What is going to be the plan for Devin Levi? You heard Lindy Ruff say at his press conference, we got 3 words for our goaltending, UPL. So they must envision Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen is going to play 60 or so games this year, going to get the bulk of the starts. But then after that, are we going to have another situation here where Reimer is the Eric Comrie as the backup goaltender, but then misses out on starts because they'll just call Levi up from Rochester as the starter to make spot starts here and there for the Sabres as the backup? I really don't want to go through that 3-goalie rotation thing again. Again, I know Reimer could clear waivers and end up going down to Rochester and start for them, but they also got Sandstrom down there as well that could kind of start for Rochester, give them some stability if Levi and or Levi end up getting called up to Buffalo, whichever one isn't the backup. But to me, it's just going to be what percentage of the starts is Luukkonen going to get? Because you'd assume if they play 4 games in a week, he's getting 3. If they play 3 games, he's getting 2 of the 3. Might not get a back-to-back here and there. But for me, it's how much is Luukkonen going to play, and what is their plan for Levi? Is he going to be the full-time backup, or is he going to be the full-time starter in Rochester?
Yeah, that's a good one. I don't know if that's something, again, I don't think that's a situation that's going to get resolved at a training camp because, again, like as weird as it sounds, I don't know what the rules are with them going to Europe, but I'm going to imagine their opening day roster has 3 goalies because they're clearly taking Reimer, Levi, and Luukkonen over to Europe.
There's going to be a taxi squad for sure.
Yeah, so I think, but going forward after that, yeah, like you gave Reimer a 1-year deal, was $1 million, so if you got to send him down to Rochester, that's fine. To me, their situation with Luukkonen depends on who the backup is. Because if Levi's the backup, to me, it's okay, you probably want a 55-27 split. But if Reimer's the backup, maybe you're comfortable throwing Luukkonen out there a lot more often. I don't know. It's going to be, like you said, it's going to be a weird situation. To me, I was talking to a buddy at work today, actually, and I said, how realistic do you think that Levi starts in Rochester? And he's like, I think it's really realistic. And I was like, damn, because I wasn't so sure. But if James Reimer's your backup, like we've seen him do it in this league, he's a quality backup goalie. So I think they kind of set themselves up nicely with that goalie depth. I am very curious how much of a battle it actually is, because in my brain, to me, it was just, it's Levi and Luukkonen. But Luukkonen's obviously the starter. I guess as the season approaches, I'm starting to doubt that a little bit more, but I think it would take like a disastrous preseason by Levi for him not to be the backup goalie on this team from day one, in my opinion.
Now, the other thing that I've been thinking about is, you don't want them to get into a situation where this is like a Yaroslav Askarov situation in Nashville, where they sign Saros, they know he's going to be the starter, and Askarov says, I don't want to be in the AHL anymore, I want to start, I'm going to request a trade. If Levi ends up getting sent down to Rochester to start the season, at what point does he say, I'm good enough to be an NHL goaltender, and then he goes and requests a trade out of Buffalo? Like, is that a scenario where it could get that way, or do you think that Levi, in the situation that he's still in, could still go down to Rochester and be okay with that for another season, knowing that UPL is the starting goaltender and they've signed him to an extension.
See, that's in my brain and the way I've worked out the situation. To me, there's no issue with that at all, because to me, the only way Levi is not an NHL goalie, again, not the starter. It's very clear that Luukkonen is the starter this year. But to me, the only way Levi is not an NHL goalie to start this season is if he tanks in the preseason. To me, if Levi has a good preseason, he's your backup goalie. You're only paying Reimer $1 million. He's got to go through waivers. Someone might claim him anyway. That's not a really bad, like, to me, you giving Reimer a 1-year deal for $1 million wasn't, oh my God, this guy has to be our backup goalie this year.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, it was an insurance policy in case Levi kind of blows it in the preseason. Like, how many times did Luukkonen have a chance in preseason to win the job only to struggle? Remember, was it Anderson and Dell were our goalies the 1 year? Like, we literally assumed it was going to be Luukkonen's job, and he played so poorly in the preseason that he went down. To me, that's the only way Levi's not a Sabre to start the season. So in my brain, no, there's no issue with Levi going down to Rochester and demanding a trade, because if he goes down to Rochester, it's because he played poorly.
That's
Askarov demanded a trade because they signed Saros to a massive deal while Askarov was playing well. Now, if Levi's playing really well and is stuck in Rochester, maybe that's an issue, but I don't see a scenario where Levi plays really well in the preseason and doesn't get first crack at the backup job this year.
Yeah, and before
maybe I'm wrong.
I mean, I hope you're right, to be honest. I don't want to get into that type of situation, but again, it is something that we've seen with another highly touted goaltender that has not been given an opportunity at the NHL level. So we'll see what kind of happens as training camp progresses there with the two goalies, again, barring hopefully no injuries and anything like that happening between now and our recording after the preseason ends. But before we get out of here, Austin, the Peyton Krebs re-sign, this was announced yesterday. Peyton Krebs was signed to a 2-year deal worth $1.45 million per AAV, 23 years old. Was a restricted free agent, and he basically said in the press release, I love coming to the rink every day. I love Buffalo, the city. I'm going to have my first kid here and everything like that. Buffalo is home, and it is exciting for me. 4 goals and 13 assists last year, playing a depth role for Don Granato. Austin, what do you see? Do you see this kind of being a 2-year deal that they could possibly use him as trade bait to move on either this year or next year? Or do they really think that he has a shot to earn himself a long-term contract here in Buffalo after this 2-year deal's over with?
To me, it's both, right? 2 years, 1.45 for, the bottom 6 fourth-line center who, he's a very polarizing guy because he was supposed to be this highly touted playmaking offensive guy. That's what I thought he was going to be. Turns out he's more of a depth-checking guy who still has some playmaking ability. Unfortunately, his line mates haven't been the greatest to finish it, but that is what happens when you're on the fourth line. To me, it's basically, this is a contract where it's 2 years. If he earns another contract, that means he's playing really well. If not, someone will take his play style for $1.45 million a year from now. I am interested to see him as well in this training camp, because I do think he plays with that tenacity, that feistiness that Lindy Ruff will gravitate towards. But at the same time, we see him, make mistakes, take some silly penalties here and there, because he does. He's a little curmudgeon. He gets under your skin. He runs his mouth, and that's why I've liked him. That's why I've endeared myself to him, because he's bought into the role that Granato gave to him. He hasn't complained one bit. Sure, it's definitely not the role he envisioned for himself. It's not the role that Sabres envisioned for him. It's not the role that fans envisioned for him, but he hasn't complained one bit. He comes to the rink every day. He said he's having his first kid. He's got his friends here, so he obviously wants to be here. We know how important that is to Kevin Adams. So to me, it's a quality bridge deal. A little bit more money than I thought he was going to get. I'm a little bit surprised he also got 2 years. Maybe, the family thing was a sticking point for him and he wanted that extra year, and that's why it took so long. But at the end of the day, not going to sweat over $1.45 million for a potential fourth-line guy. But I don't think it's a lock that he's a regular everyday player right now. I think he can, with a strong training camp, earn that role. But I think right now he's in that battle with the Aube-Kubels, the Greenways, the Laffertys for that one of those last forward spots. But the thing he does have going for him is he is a natural center, and the Sabres don't really have a natural fourth-line center right now.
Yeah, not with Zemgus Girgensons not coming back, so we'll see what happens with that. But, I mean, Krebs, I think people have to kind of level their expectations when they got him in the Eichel trade. He was a former first-round pick. Literally, Vegas is like only first-round pick that they hadn't traded. So I think now with Krebs, he's kind of, as you said, embraced that bottom six kind of role. He's not going to be a top six player here in Buffalo. Maybe he gets an opportunity with another team. You heard rumblings this summer of possibly trades with the Philadelphia Flyers for Joel Farabee that didn't happen and things like that. So you've seen his name kind of thrown out in possible trades. And if there's a big enough trade for Buffalo to swing, you'd assume that that he might be a piece that a team would look at on that short-term contract and still at a ripe age of 23. So I think wondering what his role is going to be on this team is something to look at for training camp as well. And just the goaltending and that extra forward spot that they keep saying they already have the top six forward that they didn't need to go out and make the move for. So to me, those are going to be the most interesting storylines. Ryan Johnson as well. But to me, I think it's going to be, as you said, a very intense couple of weeks here. They wanted to be held accountable. They wanted to be pushed. And guess what? They're going to get it with Lindy Ruff, whether they like it or not. So we're going to see maybe a new brand of Sabres hockey in the way that their kind of mindset is in that room with the guys that are still here carried over from last year.
Yeah, 100%. And like another more of a quirky thing about this preseason that I'm interested in is just the fact that they're going to Europe so early, and then they still have to play preseason games against Columbus and stuff while the other team's over in Europe. So I'm very interested to see how Adams and Ruff handle that. Is it going to be just hey, we're leaving for Europe this day, so we're making our NHL roster by this day? I'm very interested to see how kind of all that stuff shakes out as well, because it's a really weird situation, right? Is this no, because they didn't open the season in Sweden when they played the Tampa Bay Lightning. So is this their first time opening in Europe since the Ville Leno year?
Yes.
It has to be, right? Yeah. So it's something that I don't think we've experienced. I know I don't know about you, but I wasn't really paying attention to training camp battles back when Billy Leno was a Sabre. So for the first time in my life, this is a little quirk that haven't seen before. So I'm interested to see how Adams and Ruff handle it.
Yeah, and we'll see those.
Maybe the team just gets made after a 5-day, 6-day training camp, or maybe they bring 5 extra guys over to Europe and actually have a legitimate battle. I have no idea. So I'm also looking at that, but that's just more of a quirk than it is an actual storyline. Yeah,
we'll see what the taxi squad looks like. We'll see what the preseason lineup looks like back here in North America. It's basically going to be like Rochester's lineup. It's whatever team is going to play them might be licking their chops. But regardless, a lot of storylines for the Sabres at this training camp. And by the time we come back and record our season preview show, we'll hopefully have the full lineup for you guys after the preseason, after training camp. And it should be an exciting year as we look forward here on the network. A new exciting layout, new season, and back with the same show with myself and Austin. So, Austin, look forward to getting back at it. Season's right around the corner, and we'll see what Lindy Ruff and this team has, because they keep preaching that this is going to be a good year, and they keep showing us Lindy Ruff with these big hype videos and everything like that. So they're going to have to put their money where their mouth is, and hopefully come early October there over in Europe, they can show us something that they really have improved here.
Yeah, I'll give Adams credit. He reshaped the identity of this team, the bottom six. But it feels like they're putting a lot of this on Lindy Ruff's shoulders, and whether right or wrong to Lindy, which I don't think it's necessarily right, it feels like they're banking on him to be the guy that gets his team over the hump. So if he's got it in him, if he does it, the legend of Lindy Ruff only gets better. But it feels like, it just feels like you said, it's a lot of Lindy Ruff, and it feels like they're just hey, he's our coach, he's the reason we're gonna get there. So we'll see.
New roof, new scoreboard, new Sabres possibly. So that's going to wrap up our season premiere episode of Sabres Semantics right here on the Armchair GM Sports Network. Proudly brought to you by the Niagara Employment Help Centre, helping people find work in Niagara since 1983. Thank you to everybody who watched us on the YouTube version in video, and those who listen to us today on your favorite on-demand audio platform. For Austin Broad, my name is Brandon Caputo. Enjoy the next couple of weeks of preseason, and we'll be back with our season preview show for the Buffalo Sabres just before they start the 24-25 regular season. We'll see you guys soon. You're listening to the Armchair GM Sports Network.